Welcome to Poets and Poetry. I'm Leona Welch, and I'm so pleased you've joined us today. If you have any questions regarding this program, please contact the phone number or email address listed before or after this presentation. The purpose of this program is to promote and encourage the writing of poetry and to kindle a finer appreciation of this creative language art with introductions to award-winning poets and their poetry. My guest today is a lady I have long admired. Many have heard me say time and again, when I grow up, I want to write poetry like Naomi Stroud Simmons, not only for her gracious self, but she writes poetry like you are not going to believe. It is such an honor to present to you today Naomi Stroud Simmons. Welcome to Texoma land.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're just so excited to have you with us today in the sharing of your poetry. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Naomi now. A native Texan.
Yes.
Born in Amarillo.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get your education there, and what was your major?
I went to St. Mary's Academy, then graduated from Amarillo College. I was in the 4th graduating class from it and took a degree in Associated Science.
Oh, okay. Did you meet your husband there?
Not at the college.
Not at the college.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Mike passed away in 1994. How long were you married?
We were married 51 years. At the time he died, it would now be 63 years. Yes. Uh-huh.
Wonderful, wonderful memories, I know. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, we met in Amarillo.
Uh-huh.
He was working for Gulf Oil, and we worked in the same building. I worked for a doctor. He worked about 4 or 5 stories above me.
Uh-huh.
And we met at a dance at a place called the Natatorium. It's really, for short, it was called the Nat.
Uh-huh.
On a Friday night at a young people's dance. He had come with the president of his Sunday school class that he had visited. And anyway, that's how we met. I was dating the Sunday school fellow once in a while, and he introduced me to Mike. And that's how I met him. I didn't see him again until the end of the summer, and then that's when we started going together. That was 1941.
Okay. So how many children do you have?
We have 5 children and their spouses, and 11 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren.
There's a new one just recently.
Just recently.
How is she doing? I know she had some health problems early on. How's she
Well,
doing?
we're just taking every day, one day at a time, and she's holding her own fine.
Oh, the blessings of the good Lord, let me tell you. You've been very active in the State Society. When did you join the Poetry Society of Texas?
As best I can figure it out, it was in 1983. That's as early as my name shows up in a yearbook, and so I had sooner. I was like the people that come to Texas that get here as quick as they can. I belong to a creative writing group at the Women's Club, and they had a contest each year, and there were people in there that wrote poetry. Well, it turns out that 3 or 4 of them are members of the Poetry Society of Texas. I thought I would give anything if somebody would just ask me to join the Poetry Society. I didn't know that you could just go out and join. Well, when they asked me, I was the happiest person that ever lived, and that was in about 1983.
I see. Well, it's the Poetry Society of Texas is one of the oldest, or is the oldest active poetry society of state. It was organized in 1921. But anyway, we're going to go on. I want to mention Mrs. Simmons is the 2005 recipient of our society's Hilton Ross Greer Outstanding Service Award. This is the highest honor paid by our members. And also, she is the Society's 2006 Book of the Year is dedicated in her honor for that service. Other publications that you have been honored in was A Galaxy of Verse. You were the featured poet there, and you have a poem in there, A Mouse Speaks, and that is absolutely delightful. It's in that collection of Galaxy of Verse. I meant to bring my copy today, but I didn't. Oh, and I want to talk about this. The National Federation of State Poetry Society also publishes an anthology. And tell us how the cover came to feature a photograph of yours.
Well, it was a long experiment, and it was a wonderful experiment. I accidentally showed up with a picture on my camera that I couldn't figure out where it came from, and it was just a swish look of trees. And I thought, that sure would make a good cover for a poetry book. I need to go out and take a picture. Well, I took my digital camera with me, and everywhere I went, I took pictures of moving things. I was trying to get that motion in them. I would be riding in the back seat of a car and keep watching roads, different interesting things, and take a picture, hope that I can get that blurred look. I couldn't get it. Then we went on a trip into the upper part of Mississippi and took the Natchez Trace and happened to stop at the Cypress Swamp. I think it's marker 161.
Some things you don't ever forget.
And anyway, that was a picture that I took there, and I looked at it against a mirror and saw its possibilities. And when I did, well, I thought, well, I'm going to try for the, and it's the first, and I entered it, and it got there the day after they had notified the winner for the year. And they asked me if they could hold it over and put it in the competition the next year. So I waited 14 months to find out.
My nerves would have been shot.
They were.
I can imagine. Well, how exciting for you. Not only is she a poet, she's a photographer. You have served in several capacities of the Poetry Society of Texas, and you are the current librarian. How long have
No,
you?
I'm not the librarian. I'm not the librarian. I'm the book award chairman.
Okay.
I was librarian for 13 years.
Okay. Okay, I knew the librarian was in there somewhere. Okay. Do you belong to other poetry? I know you're a member of the National Federation.
And I was a founding member of the New Millennium Poets and of the Haiku Society.
In Fort Worth?
In Fort Worth, and I'm active in the Poets of Tarrant County and in the Fort Worth Poetry Society, which is one of the newer chapters, but it is the oldest poetry group in the Southwest.
I knew it had been around for a long, long time. Okay, we're going to mention something else that you do, among many things. Mrs. Simmons was commissioned by Amon Carter's education coordinator to compose poems to go with paintings in their permanent collection. How long have you been associated with the Carter Museum of Art?
Well, I took emeritus after 21 years in 2001. So if you can take 27 from 2001, that tells you when it's...
Not without a calculator.
All right,
but
let's
okay.
go forward. 5 years longer, that would be 32 years.
Oh, my goodness.
But I no longer give tours. I take friends or someone like this, but for years I took lots of children through, and...
So you're not active with it?
Not anymore.
Any longer, just on, okay. Something that I have long admired you for, I know that you've worked in local schools there in the Fort Worth Metroplex area, especially in promoting poetry. Are you a teacher?
No, but I had 5 children's worth of experience.
That'll teach you.
And I love working with children. I've always liked to work with children. And so it was just sort of natural. And when they came along with the poetry in the schools and trying to get us to get entries for the contests and all, well, I was interested in this and began to tell teachers, I'll come and help, I'll come and help. Well, I got takers, and that's what I did.
So, and you're still active in that, is that
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So that has been of interest to you for a good long while. Has this in any way influenced your writing, your own poetry?
Yes, because the more you try to give to someone else, you keep finding out new things you didn't know before you started, and it's been a real gain for me, and it keeps you moving. You can't ask them to do something you can't do yourself. And
it's okay. Besides the museum and the children and your poetry and your family, do you have any other hobbies that I don't know about?
I'm afraid so. I love music and I love art. I have painted. I don't feel like that everything has to be ongoing, but I did watercolors until a certain stage where it didn't work out family-wise, children-wise, and all of this, but I still enjoy that, and I appreciate so much this. But I love just almost everything: gardening, wallpapering. If I can still do it, I like to do it.
I read a poem recently. Someone had written, I think it was Bud Mahan, about your garden, or your, I don't know. I'll have to go back and look through what I think I read. Okay, let's talk about poetry.
Okay.
When did you first become interested in writing poetry?
I think in the back of my head I had put little things together for a long time, but they're always just a little light humor thing I might think of or something like this. But I might on occasion have put something on paper, but seldom. Then when I joined this creative writing group, when the members contest came around, there was a section in there on poetry. Well, I'd never thought about writing poetry. I was in there to learn to write better letters, because that's what I like to do. I like to write letters.
Okay.
So when this contest came up, there's nothing I can resist. Maybe I can resist everything but a contest. So I entered. Well, I was in a special place because if you'd never won anything before, you got to be judged with other people who had never won anything before. So this doesn't put you up against the top runners. And I did very nicely that year, and I thought, this is my thing. and that's how it started.
But that first one is so exciting, isn't it? Did you gravitate to this art form, or was it well, obviously it was a conscientious effort to write once you joined the society. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know. I had always liked to write letters and this sort of thing, but I had never thought of doing anything formal. But I had this one friend that belonged to a Spanish group that I belonged to that could never come on the first Mondays, and I couldn't understand why she couldn't come. So I inquired. She says, that's the day we have a special speaker for creative writing, and I thought, well, that might help out my letter writing. So actually, I guess I sort of gravitated to it. And then once I got into it, it was my focus.
Do you remember the title of your first poem that was ever published?
Yes, but I can't think of it.
Well, that's okay. I kind of threw that one in on you. Do any of your children write poetry?
Judy wrote poetry long before me, and she is a fine poet. But she does writing in her daily work, and so it's sort of a postman holiday for her. But I think she has lots that I've never seen, and what I have seen is marvelous. And one year I talked her into entering her poems in the Poetry Society of Texas contest, and she won 4 firsts. So I just can't understand why she won't enter again, but she did that, and as I said, postman's holiday.
In her own good time. Do you have a favorite poet?
Yes, it just depends on when you ask me.
Okay, I can relate to that.
Truly, I have certain poets that never leave, like Naomi and Billy Collins and Ted Kooser, and I keep adding to the list and adding to the list. And you'll notice I'm naming all contemporary poets, and this may be because I did not really have the foundation in poetry that I wish I had had, but that time has passed, and so you do what you can do now.
You go on to other things.
Uh-huh. But on a day-to-day basis, I will find a new poet. I'll think, oh, that is great. I've got to see if I can see some more of his work. This recently happened with a fella named, his last name was Todd Boss, B-O-S-S was his name. It was his first appearance in Poetry Magazine, and I went online immediately to see, well, he's an artist and an architect, and you couldn't find any of his poetry, so.
I just love to run across something, and when it takes my breath and I can say, oh, I wish I'd said that, I've
Yes.
got a new favorite poet. What has been the greatest influence in your writing of poetry?
The very first great influence on me was Naomi Nye. Mike had died in July. For years I had taken Poetry and Writers Magazine, Poets and Writers Magazine, and I kept seeing her name in publications where she would be so-and-so, she would be so-and-so, and I knew she was up around Denton and first one thing another, and I actually resented her using my name. I just envied her or something. I don't know what it was, but I really was so taken with her. And I happened to find out that she was going to give a workshop at Our Lady of the Lake in San Antonio. That is where Mother lived. This is in September after Mike died in July. And I thought, there's not a reason for me not to go. I'll have a place to stay, it's no problem. And so I went to San Antonio. I signed up for the workshop ahead of time, went to San Antonio, went to the shop. This was in the old Lady of the Lake library, library. And it was so much like the library where I had been in St. Mary's Academy in Amarillo.
Oh.
The dark wood, everything was so dark.
Like coming home.
Just like coming home. And here she comes through the door with a whole, she's got a rack that will push, and she's just got it loaded with books. And she comes in there, and she's got sprigs of Queen's Wreath, and she starts putting them around on the table. And, oh, I don't know, just first one thing another, gave each one of us a book to look through there and just pick out anything. And then she used this in the format a little later. And she said, now, I don't want any one of you to leave here with a question that you didn't get to ask. So if you will get out right now, write a question, something that you wanted to bring home from this workshop, and we will take care of it. At lunchtime, we'll come back here to eat our lunch. And so our lunch was from the cafeteria. We got our tray, brought it back to the room, sat down, and she just kept right on going. That was the most glorious day I have ever, and I remember my question. My question was, how can you learn to write a longer poem? Because still, that is I write short poetry. And she said, why do you want to write a longer poem? And I said, because they keep asking for 36 lines, 40 lines, a page, and I don't feel like mine are competitive if I can't do that. And she said, well, if you went into a store and picked up a book and you were going to take a look at it, said, would you start on the big long poem, or would you look for a shorter poem that you could read? So anyway.
Okay. Well, I have met this young lady you speak of, and yes, she leaves you with a lasting impression. She really does.
Well, I've now been to about 3 other workshops she has given, and I've been in 2 of her anthologies, and so I'm quite pleased about that.
It's just, I look forward to every time I can hear anything about her. Why do you write poetry?
It's an interesting question. It's, I have to now. I mean, it's just something I can do. It's sort of like the mountain. Why do you climb the mountain? Because it's there. Well, it's where I am right this minute.
We do because we have to. Do you write every day?
That's the plan. Naomi Nye suggested that you have to stake your claim. You have to say, this is my time when I'm going to write, that as long as you live, no one is going to ever come up to you and say, why don't you take 30 minutes and go write a while? She said, you've got to take that time for yourself. Well, I worked that out and finally came into a fairly good routine, and for years really did stick with it rather closely. Now, the last 2 or 3 years, I have slacked off a little bit, but I've always got that urge. I want to go back and do it just like I was doing it.
Anybody who is strong enough to keep that commitment. Do you have a favorite place that you like to go to write?
Yes, it's in my bedroom, and it's in a blue platform rocker that is well overstuffed. And a lamp and a table and books and everything is so convenient right there in that spot.
And comfy.
And good lighting, and it just works out nicely.
Do you find and I know you've written many award-winning poems. Do you find that you have favorites?
Yes, I really do. I like poems that I write in response to other poets. I particularly like poems that you can catch them at the end unaware. I love.
Little twist
at the end.
Absolutely. How would you describe your style of writing? I know I've heard, in reading some of your stuff, I know you write humorous poetry. Some of the funniest things I have ever read, one particular was The Purse That Got Lost. that one catches my mind. But what is your own description of your style of writing?
I like to think of it as being adventurous, that I'll try anything. I may not be able to do it, but I like to try new things. I like to try to come up with a combination of things that are a little different.
What a neat concept. How exciting.
But I would prefer when I go to a workshop and we submit our stuff to be critiqued, and no names, no nothing. Things are just passed out and to be read. I always hope nobody can recognize what I wrote. So I really do try to keep from falling into just doing one type of poetry.
Yeah, I hear you. Poets offer many different answers when asked where their poems come from. How would you answer that question?
On a day-to-day basis, they come from children, they come from conversations, they come from something I chanced to see, but I do have a few things that work in my favor. One is, I've always been nearsighted, and so I misread lots of things, and what I think I see is quite often much funnier than what is really there, and I rather take advantage of that. And the other thing is, now I don't hear as well as I did, and what I hear is better than what they're saying. So,
gotta love it.
But friends are a great source. You better believe I'm listening if I'm with them, and some of my best material comes from friends that I'm with, and somebody just makes an odd remark, and they don't know right that minute that I'm interested in it, but it's going to show up in a little while.
It'll be there.
But the thing that I really like the best is I have a family and lots of storytellers in the family, and they have adventurous things going on in their lives. There was a contest on hound dogs one year, and I knew that my son-in-law had coon dogs, and I called him and I said, tell me the funniest story you've ever heard about a hunting dog. And he tells me this story that involved two of the grandsons. It had to be the funniest thing I had ever heard. Well, I couldn't write it like he told it. And so I had to change the voice on it, and it had to be told by the dog. So anyway, that's how they get started.
Oh, that's so cute. You've published 6 chapbooks of poems and 1 collection in 1990. It's About Time.